everybody, thanks so much for clicking on today's video. I'm very excited about today's book. As always, it's called Zen, The Art of Simple Living, and I really wanted to talk about this book today because Zen is a common word that a lot of us often use, and I think it's worthy to spend some time unpacking it to truly understand this concept to its depth, or as much of its depth as possible given the time, and to understand the role that it could play in your life. The author is Shunmyo Masuno, and he is a priest of a Buddhist temple in Japan. So I think that's really amazing. This means that he truly does have a lot to share and speak on around this topic. Interestingly, he's also an award-winning designer of Zen gardens, and this is amazing, so you can definitely check out some of his work. And I think this particularly is worth mentioning because it shows the tie that we have to our environment and how, if you truly understand the concept of Zen, how that makes you feel quite passionate about the areas around you. A sentence that I think sums up living with Zen really well that the author puts forward in the book is, try not to be swayed by the values of others, not to be troubled by unnecessary concerns, but to live an infinitely simple life, stripped of wasteful things. And I think an important part of this that's mentioned is values, because we all have values, and no values are inherently good or bad, but we as people all put different weightings on different values. So for example, if I weight kindness the most and somebody else weights honesty the most, we will make different decisions. So you can see that kindness isn't better or worse than honesty. We just will inevitably make different decisions based on those values that we hold closer. And so because values aren't inherently good or bad, you might be swayed by other people's values if you are not fully aware of your own, and if you don't make sure that you act in alignment with your values and not others. So just make sure to be aware of your values and to check in with yourself that you're acting in alignment with them, because this will make you feel more at peace with yourself. I think this is one of the most important parts of that sentence. We could probably spend a lot of time talking about that sentence, but I really like that part of it because I think a lot of people might feel unfulfilled or agitated and they can't really put their finger on why, because they're living up to a value, for example, honesty, but the value that they hold closer is actually kindness. So you will feel slightly agitated if you are living out of alignment. We can feel that it causes a deep sense of unease, even if it's somewhat subconscious. Another thing that is part of that sentence is stripping yourself of wasteful things. And I think this is important because, again, in our modern society, we are encouraged to buy more and to consume more. And what he's trying to get across by living with more Zen is to have appreciation for the things you do have instead of always wanting to acquire more and have more. And also not to just buy things because you think you need something and you just want something new. Have a moment to stop and think about it. Think about if you actually need to buy a new thing, or if you might have something that you can use instead, or if you could maybe fix the thing that might have a slight malfunction to it. The point is, value what you already have and don't just accumulate for the sake of accumulating. The next tip or hint that the author gives us of how to live with more Zen is especially useful if you're feeling stressed or there are things you want to do and you feel like you never have the time. As a life coach, this is something that I see again and again, or hear of again and again, that there's so much that people want to do. Often people know what they want to achieve and the kind of goals that they want, but they just don't have the time. And so the author offers a hint that I think is a very simple one. It's just to wake up 15 minutes earlier and use those 15 minutes to do whatever it is you want to do with them that's ultimately contributing to your growth. Because the author says that we're all born with the same, or relatively the same, bodies and abilities, and it's our mindset and really what we do with that makes the difference. So think about that when you want that extra 15 minutes to just sleep and relax. What if you use those 15 minutes to contribute to something, whether or not it's exercising, or if you're wanting to write more, spend 15 minutes writing. If you're wanting to meditate, spend 15 minutes or even less meditating. Point is, if you can just use those 15 minutes, it will add up over time. It will help you grow in some way. And that is the thing that separates people who are just going with the flow and people who are actually mindful about how they spend their time. Another simple yet challenging habit to master that the author shares is to be organized and stay organized. So if things get out of order, straighten them up. If things get messy, clean up. And I take this as a practical example by looking at your work desk. At the end of each day, just take a little bit of time to straighten everything up so that when you go back to your desk the following day, things are just in order and it's a more welcoming space to start working than if everything's in disarray. And you can apply this to a lot of things, to your kitchen, to your bed. How much nicer does it feel getting into a made bed versus an unmade bed? Oftentimes, when you do straighten things out and clean things up in this way, you feel more clear-headed. And the author also explains an interesting Japanese philosophy that if you walk into a home and all the shoes are organized quite neatly, that gives a sense that the people within the home are harmonious and live quite well together. Whereas if all the shoes are disorganized and kind of everywhere, that home might be more chaotic and the people in there might not get along as well. This is something I remembered when I read the book. And so I do take that and do make sure that I neaten up my shoes to at least make me feel more harmonious. Something about this that makes it challenging is that cleaning is boring. Straightening up is so easy to do and so easy not to do. Cleaning up is the same. So I really recommend that for something like dishes, just find a way to make it enjoyable. Put on a series whilst you wash the dishes. If you've got your work desk that's a bit messy and you need to, or it's ideal to clean it up before you end your day, put on a song or something like that just to enjoy the process. If you tie something that's enjoyable to a task that's not enjoyable, it will encourage you to do it. Another interesting notion that the author puts across is to separate your home self with your work self or your school self. And that's why he said in Buddhist temples, they have literal gates to separate worlds in this way. So the home grounds are literally sacred grounds. And I think this is something that can benefit us if we think about it and apply it to our own lives. So, if you do work in a separate office to your home and you have to get into a car, think of that journey home as that gate. So you're crossing that gate, you're landing on sacred ground where you are present with your family and very intentional with your time. If you do work from home and you work in a different room, once you leave that room, again, you're crossing that boundary. You're on sacred ground now. Be present and do your best to leave the work thoughts and energy in that space and come back to it the next day. If you have a smaller space and you do work from home, then you might have to get a bit more creative. You might wear a pair of shoes that are like your work shoes and then take them off just to create this ritual, or make a ritual like making dinner or something like that. It's just good to, in your mind, signify that this is the switch from work day to home. A lot of what I speak about is related to productivity or building habits, and I do coach people too, and I think a topic that comes up again and again and again is procrastination. That feeling that you're putting off something you should do and you just distract yourself with other meaningless tasks. And the author has a quite brief snippet or sentence that you can remember, and sometimes these sentences or statements are really enough to be reminded of, put it up somewhere, have a reminder of it, and maybe it will help flip the switch in your mind. So the sentence is, don't put off what you can do today. I know that it's simple, but behind it, it's telling you if you are aware of what you can do today, so there's something you need to do and you can get it done today, don't put it off. If you can get it done today, do it today. And I think this is important in the moments where you're maybe reviewing your to-do list and you're like, oh no, I can rather do that tomorrow. actually ask yourself, can you do it today? And if you can, don't put it off. Just do it. It's that simple. And another part that the author adds onto this is to try take pleasure and joy in what you do. And I know that this is tricky because some things are just not enjoyable, but we have to do them. In that sense, what I mentioned earlier about pairing an activity that's not enjoyable with something that is can help infuse joy into that situation. Other times, it is a matter of just thinking about it and thinking about how you can make this joyful or bring a joyful mindset to it. The author helps with this by saying, joy is not necessarily found within the work, but within yourself. Joy is always there. And I think that's quite a nice quote to remember. It obviously depends on your circumstances, but depending on that, I think there's usually a way that you can find joy. I actually have done another book called Joyful that has simple ways to infuse joy into your environment. So if you're interested on how to do this a bit more, you might want to click on that video. I think a great way to end off this discussion of this book is the topic of knowledge versus wisdom. Knowledge is knowing what to do. It's knowing that you should get a good amount of sleep. You should eat foods that make you feel good. You should probably move your body. And you should be present with your loved ones around you. And you can insert a whole bunch of things. I'm sure you watching are a very knowledgeable person and knows what you actually need to make you feel good. So that's knowledge. It's knowing it. Wisdom is the ability to decide to actually do it. So it's one thing to know that you need good sleep and that you need to be present with your loved ones and that you need to eat your food to make you feel good. But it's not enough. Practicing wisdom means making the choice to actually act on those things that you know are good for you. And I think this is something to think about and maybe ask yourself, am I making the wise decision here? Because I think a lot of the time, people don't make the wise decisions even though they have the knowledge. So if you've got the knowledge, why not act on it and feel more fulfilled and proud of the way that you're acting by treating yourself well? I really enjoyed this book. It's quite a short one. And if you're looking to read a little bit in the morning or a little bit in the evening, this book is perfect because it has short little paragraphs or short little excerpts with pictures, and so you can really infuse your morning or infuse your day with some really beautiful wisdom, and it really kind of ends your day very well or starts your day very well. And it's manageable because it's just really chunked down rather than this huge big page and wall of words. So I highly recommend it if that is appealing to you. And I also think, unpacking words like Zen that we use a lot without maybe understanding its full potential is really interesting. So think about how Zen plays out in your life and think about how you can maybe incorporate more Zen in your life. I especially like the topic on wisdom versus knowledge. And if you have any thoughts or comments on that, I'd really love to hear them.